Yeah, so welcome, audience, to another discussion on Fathers of Nations. Now, many people have been asking me why I've not done anything to do with thematic concerns of chapter 1, 2, and 3. And I think now that students are going on with the text, it's relevant that we discuss this. I hope the discussion will be beneficial, and I welcome you for any critique that will be of value to me, because I value what you'll give me so that in future my discussion will be better for the audience. Now, when I look at chapter 1, there are a variety of thematic concerns that I meet. For example, there is hypocrisy. How do we see this hypocrisy? You realize that in Gambia, when visitors come, and those are the 49 heads of states, now the citizens suffer from water. They do not have available water at the water points, and it gets worse when dignitaries arrive. We are told on page 11 that the water is pumped to the fountains to mesmerize the visitors. Now look at this situation. You've been at home and your children have not had food for a while, and then visitors come and you divert everything to please them, and the children continue languishing in situations that are not quite pleasant. Now we also see hypocrisy when the kiosks are demolished, and this is done so to pave way for the dignitaries to have sidewalks and roads. How humorous this can be. In Africa, anything is expected. Now, I look at our own Kenyan situation and see the time that we used to expect Obama, and everything in Nairobi. That time I was around Nairobi, and it was not quite fun for the citizens. Now this is what happens in Gambia. The citizens are inconvenienced because now they can't access water. At the same time, they cannot have their kiosk. The business are run down because the dignitaries are coming. Another important theme that we realize in this chapter is animosity and rivalry. Where do we see this? Just at the when the author has shown us that the caller is calling the four, we are informed of the arrangements of how the presidents have to sit, and particularly the host president is struggling to see ensure that every visitor will be satisfied. Now, in the arrangements, he thinks of having the alphabetical order, and the Eritrea and Ethiopia are depicted as enemies. Why do we say so? In the text, the author says they cannot see eye to eye, and therefore the Gambian president is worried that he cannot put the two together. We also realize that partly the Kenyan and Tanzanian president sometimes have conflicts here and there, though they can sit together. And I think this is a common scenario for the leaders. We can even see currently our own government and what they're experiencing. So rivalry that turns a bit personal. People say that leaders, or rather political leaders, cannot have personal matters, that they're always friends. I wonder how true this is. Now, when I look at that chapter, I again see an aspect of poverty. Why do I say there is poverty? We are told that Gambians are tied down to poverty because majority of them live in slums, yeah, and their livelihoods depend on kiosks. So, especially when this is run down now, we realize that everything is not good for them. We also can agree or disagree, but I believe there is imperialism in this chapter, because as we look at the document that is titled for the discussion in the summit, we realize that there are 20 Nobel laureates who discovered a way to develop Africa, and they published the discovery in a document that is shown on page 7 by the author. And I believe as you read, just see whether you can agree or disagree with me, because now it's like Africa still depends on the external bodies to make decisions about their own country. Now, the other thing that I realized was bad governance. Why do I say there's bad governance in Fathers of Nations, chapter 1? The government demolishes kiosks, which families depends on. Most families depend on these kiosks for daily livelihood, and this proves that the government does not really care about the citizens. You can check that on page 11. And when I looked at the aspect of also shutting down water points and channeling it to the fountain so that dignitaries would find the place beautiful, I wonder how somebody can survive without water. Imagine a day without water. I've ever experienced this at some point. Um, when living in some places I don't want to mention so that you may not feel bad, but I believe water is quite an essential. The other poor governance maybe can be shown later in other chapters. Now we also have greed for power, and this one I found it on page 7. When some leaders have risen to power through rigged elections, that's what the author tells us, that some of the leaders have risen to power through rigged elections, military coups, and foul play. That is shown on page 7. We as well meet the role of the media. Why do I say there is role of media? If you can agree with me, we are told that the media plays the role of critiquing, and it enlightens the public and provides checks and balances on the government of the day. They question, for example, through Mackenzie. You realize Mackenzie, as Afolabi says, she may not just be as a simple woman as she is. In fact, refers to her as possibly somebody dangerous. We have specific similes which you'll see, and metaphors which you'll see later when he talks of sharp as a needle and what as a button. You know, like, okay, I don't want to go to that because that is now I'm diverting attention. I was talking about the role of media, and now I was talking particularly about the situation where Mackenzie Fiona, this girl who has been raised by Elizabeth from Edinburgh. Now, this girl questions Dr. Afolabi about his ability to talk to the president about the development of the nations when he actually wrote The Failure of Nations, and that is from page 8 to 9. She really gets to Dr. Afolabi's nerves. Then I saw something like optimism. Optimism or hope is shown when Dr. Afolabi is quite optimistic that if the heads of state adopt path or way omega, then they are going to bring the African politics to another level, and therefore there'll be no elections that will be rigged, there'll be no military coups, and there'll be no foul play. That we see on page 7, and somehow Fiona doubts whether that is possible. And another essential theme that I noticed is corruption. Now we see this as a vice in the text. The choice is done by the guards. When they are at checkpoints, they just have to take extorting bribes from motorists and passerbys. So on page 11, that is what we are told. Now, another important theme is education. Remember, this chapter starts with people like Professor Kimani, who is a lecturer, or rather a professor. Then we have Dr. Afolabi. Then we have Engineer Tahir. We are even told that he had pursued engineering. And then we have Mackenzie. Mackenzie herself has gone through formal education, as she tells us, Elizabeth. And the adoptive family generally made her go through that. That is page 5 to 6. Yeah, so those are the thematic concerns in this chapter. And now I just ask that I briefly mention the styles, but I'll expand that next time. Now we have styles such as suspense, in cases where we do not know the caller, whoever he is. We also don't know why the four strangers are here yet. Now, we have a lot of vivid description. For example, Professor Kimani is well described. We are told that his hairline was retrieving, yeah, and he had a habit of smacking lips. I believe, audience, you know what smacking means. So on page 1, we are told that. Now we meet Ngobile Melusi, comrade, and we are told that he has a bushy mustache. When it wriggles over his mouth, it looks more like a butterfly or something like that. Page 1 again. Then we meet Pastor Chineke Chamaka, and we are told that he has a big flabby body, and he looks like a failed sumo wrestler. And then Engineer Saif Tahir, and we are told that he seemed like he was resisting or rebelling against something. That comes on page 2. Now, Fiona Mackenzie is also well described, and particularly what she's wearing. She's wearing a scarlet blouse and black skirt and high heels. That is on page 4. Then we have a lot of similes in the part. We'll discuss that later. Hyperbole, metaphors, and allusion. Then we have satire. Generally, Fathers of Nations, if you agree with me, is a satirical book teaching us through some sort of laughter. And then we have irony, a lot of irony, situations we do not expect, the verbal, the verbal irony through what people say and what we expect of them, and even dramatic irony for that matter. Then there is flashback. We have a lot of flashback. That is how we learn about Mackenzie's past and how her parents died. We handle rhetorical questions, and we have dialogues, humor, idiomatic expressions, soliloquy, we have personification, and onomatopoeia and idiophones. Yeah. So then, generally in this chapter, we have Melusi, who is very defiant. Why do I say he's defiant? He just says not applicable when he's told to write about his occupation, and he has one, remember? Then Engineer Saif Tahir, he's rebellious. We are just from the description, he looks like he's rebelling against something, and that his steps or gestures prove something like that. We may see that, of course, the author is preparing us for something. Maybe we'll see that later. Now we have Professor Karanja Kimani, who is very cautious. Remember when he was called by this mysterious caller, or anonymous rather at that point, he does not just pick the phone, he looks at it and takes some time until the caller says, yeah, I heard you are there. Now when he picks the call, then he does not also respond, he keeps quiet until the caller speaks. These are cautions we have to take care of. Now we also realize he's a bit rude. For example, he does not use polite language when referring to the Nigerian in the can we call it a side really in a novel? Possibly no, but maybe let me just say he thinks that this is a cocky educated Nigerian, cocky, page 4. Then when he picks the call, what does he do? He does not respond. So it's a bit rude, for we understand etiquette on telephone in Form 1. We are supposed to respond, and there are particular ways we are to do that. He's also tactful, I believe, because he makes a guess about the caller, and he thinks that that man is a bit temperamental, and so he plays cool, because now when you're dealing with somebody who is quite emotional, sometimes you have to be cool and compose yourself so that you do not offend the caller. And the caller, on the other hand, I realize he's also quite hot-tempered. Why do I say so? Professor Kimani says he's a kind of cocky Nigerian, and when he speaks, he stresses some syllables in injecting anger into whatever communication he passes across. Now he's also commanding and dictatorial in a way. because he speaks authoritatively to Kimani when he's giving instructions. Yeah, like when he says 1124, page 3. He's a bit rude also, because he does not even introduce himself to Professor Kimani, and we know telephone etiquette tells us we have to introduce ourselves when we call. And I find that he's irritable because he snaps at Kimani. He's also secretive, elusive, and sly because he does not reveal his identity. Then we have Fiona Mackenzie, who is quite courteous because he politely approaches Dr. Afolabi. She does, in that case. Then she's quite naive. She talks too much to a stranger. Maybe it was a tactful way to make him talk to her, because she noted that he is a bit resistant. She's also humorous because when she tells him that I expected to see a scarecrow, an academic scarecrow dressed in jeans, and then she also tells Afolabi to go and take a picture because he will never look such gorgeous. She's open-minded also by showing that, and even talking about Dr. Afolabi having written Failure of Nations, and how can he now talk about Way Omega. Then we have Tactful, because I think she's trying to play, a victim so that Dr. Afolabi complies. She's quite knowledgeable because she's informed about who Afolabi is, and she has done some background check, which a journalist should anyway. Now, when we look at Dr. Abiola Afolabi, he's quite knowledgeable, and we are told he studied at Harvard University in USA, and is now a teacher at the University of Ibadan, Nigeria, page 6. We are also aware that he has written a book by the name Failure of States, as stated on page 6. Then we notice that he is wise and intelligent. Why? When we see that heads of state, 50 for that matter, have invited him to the summit, and he has to give advice, then that means he's wise and intelligent at the same time. Then he's judgmental because he judges Ms. Mackenzie as a bad-mannered journalist just like others. He's also defensive because when asked by Mackenzie why he thinks he can really talk about the matters of development, he quickly says, I was invited. Repeat. He again also says that Mackenzie should go read the books and, such statements. He's also very proud and sarcastic. That's why he tells Fiona that I was invited by presidents. Repeat. Then he's arrogant a bit because he says that he cannot defend his book before a third-rate reporter for the Zambian news. He's optimistic because he believes that regardless of everything, that all matters will be successful. So I would ask you to brainstorm on these styles which happen to be in chapter 1. You might share and comment as you subscribe to my edutainment channel. Share what you think about this chapter. What did I leave? Maybe what more can I add to this? And look forward to a discussion that we are going to have with other teachers very soon and students, because literature